"Ma'am, you can't do that," the store manager snapped, loud enough to turn heads 3 aisles away. Emily Carter froze at the customer service counter, one hand tightening around a crumpled receipt, the other resting on her daughter's small shoulder like an anchor. The supermarket around them looked like a showroom. Polished floors that caught the lights like mirrors, neat pyramids of imported fruit, the warm scent of fresh bread drifting through the air as if money itself had a fragrance. And in the middle of that glossy calm, Emily stood in a thrifted coat and tired sneakers, trying to make her voice behave. "I'm not asking for anything for free," she said, soft and steady. "I just need to exchange it for the right one." On the counter sat a sealed container of children's milk, the label still crisp, the plastic ring untouched. Lily's eyes stayed fixed on it anyway, like it was the only thing in the world that mattered. The manager, Brandon Hale, name tag shining like a badge, leaned forward, the corners of his mouth curling with practiced impatience. "Returns aren't for situations like yours," he said, and that last word landed like a door closing. A woman in a designer scarf paused nearby, scanning Emily the way people scan clearance tags. "If you can't afford it," she murmured to no one and everyone, "maybe shop somewhere else." A few chuckles followed, quick and cruel, then faded into that particular silence people wear when they don't want to be responsible. Emily swallowed, tasting embarrassment like copper. She had driven 20 minutes on a quarter tank because this store was the only place open after her shift ended. She had counted dollars in the parking lot, told herself the milk was worth it because Lily had been coughing again, because her little body didn't tolerate just anything, because a mother learns what her child needs the way a sailor learns the sky. Then, at home, one look at the ingredients and her stomach dropped. Wrong kind, wrong blend, the kind that made Lily wheeze and fuss and cling to her chest like she was trying to borrow breath. So Emily came back, not to beg, not to complain, just to trade one sealed container for another that cost less. A simple exchange, a reasonable request. But Brandon's eyes traveled over her like a judgment. "You opened it," he accused, even though the seal was intact. "People do that. They try to work the system." Lily's fingers tightened around her mother's sleeve. "Mom," she whispered, voice thin as a thread, "did I do something bad?" Emily's heart pinched so hard it felt like it made a sound. She lowered herself to Lily's height, brushing back a strand of hair from her daughter's forehead. "No, sweetheart," she whispered, forcing warmth into every syllable. "You didn't do anything wrong." Lily coughed, small at first, then sharper, and her shoulders lifted with the effort. Emily straightened, panic rising behind her ribs like a tide. "Please," she said to Brandon, the word tasting like pride breaking. "She can't have this kind. I just need the other one. The one for sensitive stomachs." Brandon's face didn't soften. It hardened. "Then pay for it," he said, and motioned with his hand as if he were shooing away a problem. "Or leave." The air seemed to shrink around Emily. People pretended not to listen while listening anyway. And then, behind Emily, cutting through the hush with a calm that didn't ask permission, a man's voice spoke, low and certain. "Don't open that," he said. "And don't let her walk out without the right one." Emily turned. A tall man in a charcoal coat stood a few steps back, posture effortless, eyes sharp with focus instead of curiosity. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't angry either. He looked alarmed, like he'd seen this moment before and knew exactly how it ended if nobody intervened. Brandon scoffed. "Sir, this is a store policy issue." The man's gaze didn't leave Lily. "No," he said quietly, and the quiet carried weight. "It's a breathing issue." He stepped closer, placing himself beside Emily not like a hero posing for applause, but like a wall against the wind. "That child needs a different formula," he continued, voice steady, American vowels clipped with certainty. "And if you keep humiliating her mother instead of helping, you're going to have a lot more than a return to worry about." Brandon blinked, thrown off by the man's authority, by the way the room seemed to tilt toward him. "Who are you?" he demanded. The man finally lifted his eyes, clear, controlled, and suddenly familiar to a few faces in the crowd. "My name is Alexander Whitmore," he said, and the way he said it made the silence turn electric. Alexander Whitmore did not raise his voice, yet it carried the way a gavel carries, clean and final. Brandon Hale's smirk faltered, then tried to come back, but the room had already changed. People had shifted from spectators to witnesses, and Brandon could feel it. Emily stood perfectly still, as if moving might spill whatever fragile dignity she had left, while Lily's small chest worked a little too hard for each breath, her cough coming in tight little bursts that made Emily's fingers tremble where they rested on her daughter's shoulder. "This is a customer service desk," Brandon said, forcing a laugh that did not land. "Sir, you are making a scene." Alexander's eyes stayed on Lily, then moved to the sealed container on the counter, then to the receipt in Emily's hand. "No," he replied, calm as marble. "You made the scene when you decided embarrassment was part of your policy." A few feet away, the woman in the designer scarf pressed her lips together and looked at the floor, suddenly busy with her own discomfort. Emily's throat tightened. She wanted to say she could handle it, that she did not need saving, that she was not helpless. But her daughter's cough stole the air from the argument forming in her mouth. Alexander angled his body slightly toward Emily, careful not to crowd her, careful not to make her feel like a charity case on display. "Emily," he said, reading her name from the receipt without making a show of it. "Tell me what Lily needs." Emily blinked at him, startled by the way he spoke her name like it mattered. She needs the sensitive formula," Emily managed, voice thin but steady. "The one for dairy intolerance. The pediatrician said to avoid certain additives. This one was an honest mistake." Brandon scoffed, pointing at the container. "Mistake or not, you cannot return that. People like her buy the expensive stuff and swap it for the cheap one. It happens all the time." The words "people like her" hung in the air, ugly in their simplicity. Emily felt heat rise in her cheeks, and with it a familiar ache. The ache of being judged by the wear on your shoes instead of the truth in your eyes. She remembered counting quarters for laundry, measuring gas in miles instead of gallons, stretching meals like patience. She had learned to be quiet because quiet was safer. But quiet did not protect Lily. Lily coughed again, and Emily's instincts flared. She shifted Lily closer, murmuring, "It is okay. Baby, look at mommy," trying to keep her own fear from spilling into her daughter's face. Alexander's expression tightened, not with anger, but with urgency. "How long has she been coughing like that?" he asked. "Since last night," Emily answered, then corrected herself, because the truth mattered. "Since last week, off and on. Today it is worse. I worked a double shift, and I thought I grabbed the right one." Brandon rolled his eyes. "This is not a clinic. If your child is sick, take her to a doctor." Emily flinched because that was the part he did not see, the part where a doctor visit meant choosing between a copay and keeping the lights on. Alexander turned his gaze to Brandon, and for the first time his calm sharpened into something that felt like a blade without being violent. "Do you know what it costs a mother to stand here and ask for help in a room like this?" he asked, softly enough that it forced people to lean in. "It costs her pride. It costs her peace. And you are charging interest." Brandon straightened, defensive. "Sir, you do not understand. We have rules." Alexander nodded once. "Then let us talk about your rules. Show me your posted return policy. Show me where it says a sealed item cannot be exchanged. And while you do that," he continued, reaching calmly into his coat pocket, "I would like you to call your district manager." Brandon's eyes narrowed. "Why would I do that?" Alexander set a sleek black card on the counter, not tossed, not flashed, simply placed like a fact. The card caught the overhead light with a quiet sheen. Brandon looked down, read the name, and the color drained from his face in a slow, unmistakable wave. Around them, the air tightened again, but this time it was not shame pressing on Emily. It was anticipation pressing on everyone else. Brandon's fingers hovered over the black card as if it might burn him. He glanced at it again, then at Alexander, then toward the security guard standing near the end cap of sparkling water like he had been hired to intimidate someone's grocery list. The guard shifted his weight, suddenly unsure which side of the room he belonged to. Brandon cleared his throat, trying to rebuild authority out of thin air. "Mr. Whitmore," he said, the name coming out smaller than before. "With respect, this is not necessary. We can handle this internally." Alexander did not move the card. He did not need to. The card was not a threat. It was a mirror, and Brandon could see himself in it. "You have been handling it internally," Alexander replied. "That is the problem." Emily's eyes flicked between them, confusion mixing with a cautious hope she did not want to admit. She had heard the last name Whitmore before. Everyone in this county had. It was on billboards for scholarships and hospital wings, on news articles about business expansions, on the kind of donations that came with ribbon cuttings and glossy photos. But Alexander Whitmore, standing beside her in a grocery store, defending her like her dignity was a policy worth enforcing, felt unreal in the way miracles feel unreal right until they happen. Lily coughed again, and Emily immediately turned inward, focusing on her daughter's face. "Breathe with me," she whispered, counting softly, stretching her own breath to give Lily a rhythm. 1, 2, 3. In the corner of her eye, she saw the woman in the designer scarf reach into her purse and then stop, embarrassed by her own sudden instinct to help. People did that sometimes. They wanted to be kind, but they hated being seen being kind to the wrong person. Alexander noticed Lily's breathing, and his voice softened when he spoke to Emily. "Is she allergic or intolerant?" he asked. Emily swallowed. "Intolerant," she said. "But it gets bad when she is sick. The doctor said the wrong formula can make her cough worse." Brandon cut in quickly, desperate to regain control. "We cannot verify any of that. We cannot just give out product because someone says, 'Stop,'" Alexander said, still quiet, but the word landed like a door slamming shut. Brandon's mouth hung open for a second, and the room went so still you could hear the refrigerated cases humming. Alexander turned his head slightly, addressing not just Brandon, but the invisible audience that had gathered. "A sealed item is not a crime," he said. "A mother asking to exchange one formula for another is not a scam. And a child coughing at your counter is not an inconvenience." Brandon's face tightened. "Sir, the policy." "Pull it up," Alexander said. "Now." Brandon hesitated, then tapped at the computer with stiff fingers. The cashier, Tina, leaned in and whispered something, her eyes darting from Alexander's suit to Emily's coat, like she was watching two worlds collide. On the screen, the return policy appeared, neat and official, and in the glow of it Brandon's earlier confidence looked flimsy. Alexander pointed gently, not triumphantly. "There," he said. "Unopened. Exchange permitted within 14 days with receipt." That is exactly what she is doing. Brandon's cheeks reddened. "It says permitted," he argued. "It also says management discretion." Alexander's gaze lifted. "Discretion is not discrimination," he replied. A small sound moved through the crowd. Not quite a gasp, not quite applause, something like collective recognition. Emily felt her shoulders sag, as if her body finally understood she had not imagined the cruelty. She had not been too sensitive. It had been real. And now it was being named in plain language, in front of everyone who had watched her swallow it. Brandon's hand reached for the phone. "I will call the district manager," he muttered, eyes down. Alexander nodded once. "Good," he said. Then he looked at Emily and lowered his voice, as if giving her privacy in the middle of a public moment. "While he calls," he said, "let us get Lily what she needs. Tell me the exact one. Brand, type, size." Emily blinked rapidly. Holding back tears she refused to let the room steal from her. "The sensitive blend," she whispered. "The powder. The 12-ounce can." Alexander turned to Tina. "Please bring it," he said. Tina stood frozen for half a heartbeat, then hurried away as if the request had rewritten her job description on the spot. And for the first time since Emily walked into that store, the air around her did not feel like judgment. It felt like possibility. Tina returned at a half-run, clutching a 12-ounce can of sensitive formula like it was suddenly the most important item in the building. She set it on the counter with both hands, careful and quiet. And for a moment the glossy customer service desk did not look like a place where people got shamed. It looked like a place where things could be made right. Emily reached for the can, then paused, instinctively waiting for someone to yank it away, to accuse her again, to demand a confession she did not owe. Instead, Alexander slid the sealed container she had brought a few inches to the side and nodded toward the new one. "That is the exchange," he said, simple as math. "No humiliation required." Lily's eyes followed the can, and she gave a small, hopeful inhale that turned into another cough. Emily's hands hovered near her daughter's shoulders, rubbing gentle circles through the fabric of her coat. "It is okay," she whispered, more to herself than to Lily, because she needed to believe it. Brandon kept the phone pressed to his ear, jaw tight, whispering into it like he was trying to bargain with time. His eyes flicked up again and again, not at Emily, but at Alexander, as if Alexander were the only real person in the room, and everyone else was background noise. Yes, Brandon muttered. Yes, I understand. He is here. Right now. The crowd had grown thicker, a loose semicircle of carts and curiosity. A teenage boy in a varsity jacket stopped pretending to look at the gum display. An older man with a coffee in his hand watched with the calm attention of someone who had learned long ago how quickly the world can turn on a person. The woman in the designer scarf kept her face angled away, but her ears stayed pointed directly at the counter. Emily could feel their eyes on her again, and the familiar heat rose in her chest, but something about it had changed. Before, their eyes had felt like stones. Now, with Alexander beside her, those eyes felt like a jury that might finally hear the full story. I do not want trouble, Emily said quietly, her voice barely above the hum of the refrigerators. She did not know why she said it, only that she had spent years trying to prove she was not a problem. Alexander looked at her, steady and composed. You are not trouble, he replied. You are a mother doing exactly what you are supposed to do. The words landed so gently that Emily's throat tightened anyway. She blinked hard, refusing to let tears win in front of people who had not earned them. Lily leaned into Emily's side, thumb in her sleeve, eyes heavy. Mom, Lily whispered. Can we go home now? Emily swallowed. Soon, baby, she promised. Soon. Alexander turned slightly toward Tina. Can you also bring a small bottle of water? He asked. Room temperature, if possible. Tina nodded quickly and hurried away again, as if kindness had become a task she could finally perform without permission. Brandon snapped his phone shut, face pale and glossy with sweat he had not earned. The district manager is on her way, he said, voice clipped. This is unnecessary. We can process the exchange and be done. Alexander's expression did not change. You could have done that 10 minutes ago, he said. Instead, you chose performance. Brandon's nostrils flared. I was protecting the store, he insisted. Alexander's gaze lifted and swept the crowd, then returned to Brandon, calm and unyielding. You were protecting your ego, he said, and you used her as the cost. Emily's fingers tightened around the new can of formula. She could feel the metal cool through the label. She wanted to vanish, to leave before the next insult could land, but she also felt something unfamiliar pressing up through her exhaustion, the urge to stand her ground. Not for revenge, for Lily, for the version of herself that had learned to accept shame like a receipt. Tina returned with the water and set it down. Alexander offered it to Emily without touching her, without assuming. Emily took it and brought the bottle to Lily's lips. Lily sipped, small and careful, and her breathing steadied just enough to make Emily's shoulders drop. The room exhaled with her. And then, from the far end of the aisle, a woman in a navy blazer appeared, walking fast with purpose, eyes locked on the counter. Brandon straightened, as if bracing for impact. The name tag on her lapel caught the light, District Manager. She stopped in front of Alexander, then glanced at Brandon, then at Emily and Lily, and her face tightened with a look that said she had seen this story before. Mr. Whitmore, she said, voice controlled. What happened here? Alexander did not answer right away. He looked at Emily first, as if giving her the choice to speak for herself. And for the first time, Emily did not look down. Emily felt the weight of the district manager's question settle over the counter like a spotlight, bright enough to show every flaw in the room. The woman's name tag read Claire Donovan, and everything about her looked efficient. The pressed blazer, the neat hair, the kind of composure that usually protected a store from lawsuits and bad reviews. Brandon tried to fill the silence before it could indict him. There was a customer attempting an improper return, he said quickly, gesturing toward Emily as if she were an item with a defective label. I followed policy. Mr. Whitmore intervened. Claire's eyes flicked to the screen, then to the sealed container Emily had brought, then to Lily's pale, tired face. Her expression tightened, not with sympathy, but with calculation, the way someone looks when they are deciding what the truth is going to cost. Alexander finally spoke, measured and calm. She attempted a proper exchange, he said. Unopened. With receipt. Within 14 days. Your manager chose to accuse her of theft and humiliate her in front of customers. A ripple moved through the crowd, and Emily could feel the room leaning toward the words like they were oxygen. Claire held up a hand, not to silence Alexander, but to slow the moment down into something she could manage. Ma'am, she said to Emily, voice controlled but less sharp than Brandon's. Is that accurate? Emily's mouth went dry. She had been invisible for so long that being asked directly felt like being lifted into the air. Lily's fingers gripped her sleeve, and Emily looked down at her daughter, then back up. Yes, she said, and surprised herself with how steady it sounded. I brought it back because it was the wrong formula. It is sealed. I asked to exchange it for the sensitive blend because my daughter gets sick with the other kind. He said people like me try to scam the system. Brandon's face snapped toward her. I did not say that, he hissed. Emily did not flinch. You said people like her, Emily answered, nodding toward Lily, then back to herself, because the insult had not been aimed at one of them. It had been aimed at both. Claire's jaw tightened. Brandon, she said, the tone changing. Did you say that? Brandon sputtered. I was warning about fraud. We have had issues. I have discretion. Alexander's gaze remained steady. Discretion is not discrimination, he repeated, and this time the words sounded less like a quote and more like a verdict. Claire turned toward the computer, her fingers moving quickly as she pulled up the policy and the transaction history. She scanned the receipt, then the time. Stamp, then the return window. Her eyes narrowed. The exchange is permitted, she said flatly. Brandon opened his mouth, but she cut him off with a look. And it should have been processed immediately. Brandon's face flushed a darker red, and he tried to regain ground. But she caused a scene, he insisted, gesturing toward the crowd like the crowd had appeared out of thin air. Emily felt a flash of anger, hot and clean. She had not shouted. She had not begged. She had not even cried. The only thing she had done was stand there with a sealed container and a tired child. If that counted as a scene, then the world was more broken than she thought. Lily coughed softly again, and Emily lifted the water bottle to her lips. Lily took a sip, then leaned her head against Emily's side. Alexander watched Lily's breathing, then spoke to Claire. Pull the camera footage, he said. Not because I need proof. Because you do. Claire hesitated, then nodded. Security, she called, and the guard stepped forward, suddenly eager to be useful. Please bring up the last 20 minutes at customer service. Brandon's shoulders tensed. He tried to laugh, but it sounded brittle. This is ridiculous, he muttered. Over milk. Alexander's eyes met his, calm and unwavering. No, he said. Over dignity. The monitor behind the counter flickered to life, and the grainy video began to play. Emily saw herself on the screen, small and tired, holding a receipt with hands that looked like they belonged to someone older than her years. She saw Brandon leaning in, his mouth forming words she did not have to hear again to remember. She saw customers turning, smirking, watching, and then she saw the moment Alexander stepped into frame, not as a savior, but as a line drawn in quiet ink. Claire watched the footage with her lips pressed tight, and when it ended, she did not look at Emily first. She looked at Brandon like a person staring at a problem that had finally stopped being deniable. Brandon, she said, voice low, hand me your badge. The room went still. Even the refrigerators seemed to hush. Brandon blinked. You cannot be serious, he whispered. Claire did not blink back. I am, she said. Effective immediately. Brandon's hand hovered near his name badge as if it were suddenly glued to his chest. Claire, he said, voice cracking into something he did not recognize. You cannot do this over one complaint. Over one customer. Claire Donovan did not raise her voice, and that was what made it brutal in its own clean way. This is not over one customer, she replied. This is over conduct. You were recorded. You violated policy. You escalated a routine exchange into public humiliation. Brandon's fingers pinched the edge of the badge, and with a stiff pull he removed it, holding it out like an offering he hated to give. Claire took it without ceremony, then looked to the security guard. Please escort Brandon to the office, she said. The guard nodded, posture suddenly professional, and Brandon's eyes darted toward the crowd as if looking for someone to rescue his pride. No one moved. The woman in the designer scarf stared at her cart. The teenage boy in the varsity jacket blinked hard. Tina, the cashier, kept her hands folded in front of her like she was trying to keep herself from shaking. Brandon swallowed, shoulders tight, and walked away without another word, the sound of his shoes against the polished floor oddly loud in the hush. Emily felt the room exhale, but the relief did not rush in like celebration. It arrived slowly, like warmth returning to fingers after being out in the cold. She held the new can of formula close to her chest, the way someone holds something precious when they have learned the world can snatch it away. Lily's breathing had steadied, but her eyelids drooped with exhaustion, and Emily's heart ached at how small her daughter looked in this vast, bright store. Claire turned back to Emily, her face softer now, though still careful. "Miss Carter," she said, "I am sorry for what happened. Your exchange will be processed immediately, and I would like to offer you a store gift card for the inconvenience." Emily's first instinct was to refuse, because refusing had always been her way of proving she was not taking advantage. But Alexander's voice came gently from beside her. "Take it," he said quietly, not as an order, but as permission, not as charity, as accountability. Emily looked at him, and for a moment she saw something in his expression that surprised her, not pity, but respect, the kind that did not make her smaller, the kind that made her feel seen. Claire motioned to Tina. "Ring it properly," she said. "Exchange plus gift card. And note this incident in the system." Tina nodded quickly, fingers flying across the keyboard with a seriousness she had not shown when Emily first stepped up. The register beeped, crisp and official, and the screen displayed the word exchange like a simple truth that should never have been questioned. Emily's receipt printed, warm in her hand, and with it came something else. Proof that she had not been wrong to stand there. Claire leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. "Is Lily under a doctor's care?" she asked. Emily nodded. "Yes, but appointments are hard," she admitted before she could stop herself. The confession felt dangerous, like showing an open palm in a room full of knives. Claire's gaze flicked to Alexander, then back to Emily. "There is a clinic partnership in our community program," Claire said carefully. "I can give you the number. They do sliding scale." Emily's throat tightened. She had heard promises before, usually spoken with cameras nearby, but Claire's offer was quiet, practical, and immediate. Alexander nodded once, approving the direction without taking over. "Write it down," he said to Claire. "Give her something she can use tomorrow morning." While Claire scribbled on a card, Alexander crouched slightly, so he was closer to Lily's height without towering over her. "Hi, Lily," he said softly. Lily's eyes opened a little, wary but curious. "Hi," she whispered. Alexander offered a small, reassuring smile. "You did nothing wrong," he told her. "Not one thing." Lily blinked, then glanced at her mother as if checking whether it was safe to believe him. Emily pressed a kiss to Lily's hair, her voice catching despite her effort. "You hear that?" she murmured. "You are good." Alexander straightened and looked at Emily again. "You came back for the right formula," he said. "That is what strong mothers do." Emily felt the words settle into the bruised places inside her, the places that had been told for years that strength only counted if it wore a suit. She opened her mouth to thank him, but what came out was smaller and truer. "Why did you step in?" she asked. Alexander's eyes held hers, steady and quiet. And for a brief second, behind his composure, something older flickered there, something like memory. "Because I have seen this before," he said. "And I promised myself I would never walk past it again." Emily expected the answer to be something polished, something people like Alexander Whitmore said when cameras were around. But there were no cameras here, only fluorescent lights and the soft wheeze of a child who had finally stopped fighting for each breath. Alexander's gaze stayed on Lily for a moment, as if making sure the crisis had truly passed. Then he looked back at Emily with a steadiness that felt almost private. "When I was 8, he said, "my mother brought me into a store like this. Not this exact one, but close enough. Bright floors, expensive displays, people who looked at you like you were a smudge on the glass." Emily listened, her fingers still curled around the new receipt as if paper could keep the moment from disappearing. Alexander continued, voice low, careful, the way people speak when they are touching a memory that still stings. "She had saved for weeks to buy something small for me. A carton of milk and a box of cereal. That is it. And at the register, she realized she was short by a few dollars." Emily felt something tighten in her chest, because she knew that moment, even without having lived his exact version of it. She had stood at registers and watched totals climb like cliffs. She had watched cashiers watch her hands. "My mother asked if she could put one item back," Alexander said. "Just one." The cashier laughed. The manager made a joke loud enough for the whole line to hear. People stared. Some smirked. No one stepped in. His mouth tightened, not with anger, but with the effort of staying composed. I remember the way my mother stood there and tried to keep her face calm, like tears were something she could negotiate with. I remember the shame moving through her like heat. And I remember thinking it was my fault because I was hungry. Lily shifted against Emily, and Emily brushed her hair back, a protective gesture that suddenly felt heavier with meaning. That day, Alexander said, I decided two things. First, I would never let money be the reason my mother got treated like she was less than human. Second, if I ever had power, I would use it to stop this exact kind of cruelty. Emily blinked, the story landing in her like a truth she had always suspected, that the people who truly understand humiliation are the ones who do not turn it into a weapon. But you are, she started, then stopped, because she did not know how to say billionaire without making it sound like a wall between them. Alexander offered a small, almost tired smile. I am successful, he said. I am also a person who remembers. Claire returned with a small card in her hand, the clinic number written neatly along with a contact name. She passed it to Emily with both hands, respectful now. If you call, tell them you spoke to me, she said. They will schedule you quickly. Emily nodded, grateful, but still cautious, like gratitude had burned her before when it came with strings. Tina finished the exchange and slid the bag across the counter. Inside were the sensitive formula, the water, and the gift card in a plain envelope. Emily reached for the bag, then hesitated again. That old instinct to refuse help before help could be turned into accusation. Alexander saw it and spoke softly. Emily, you did not come here asking for someone to rescue you, he said. You came here asking for a fair exchange. That is what you were leaving with. Emily swallowed. Thank you, she said, and it came out rawer than she meant, because it was not just about milk. It was about being believed. It was about having someone say, out loud, that she deserved basic respect. The crowd began to disperse, carts rolling away, people returning to their lists and their lives. But some of them kept glancing back at Emily with an unfamiliar look, like regret had found them late. The woman in the designer scarf stepped forward, then stopped, then finally spoke, her voice smaller than before. I am sorry, she said, eyes fixed on the counter instead of Emily's face. I should not have said what I said. Emily stared at her for a heartbeat, then nodded once, not granting absolution, simply acknowledging the words. I just wanted my daughter to have the right formula, Emily replied quietly. That is all. The woman's cheeks flushed, and she backed away, swallowed by the aisle. Claire cleared her throat, her professional mask back in place, but altered by the moment. Mr. Whitmore, she said, I will file a full report, and I will schedule retraining for the entire staff. Alexander nodded. Not just retraining, he said. A new standard. Starting today. Emily adjusted Lily on her hip, feeling her daughter's weight like a promise. We should go, she whispered to Lily. Lily nodded sleepily. Emily turned to leave, then paused and looked back at Alexander. I do not know what tomorrow looks like, she admitted, voice barely above a whisper. But today, you made it feel possible. Alexander held her gaze, calm and sincere. You made it possible, he said. I just refused to let anyone steal it from you. Emily walked out of the store with Lily pressed against her shoulder, the bag in her hand feeling heavier than 12 ounces ever should, because it carried something rarer than groceries, relief. The automatic doors parted with a soft hiss, and the night air met her face, cool and clean, smelling faintly of rain on asphalt. In the parking lot, the world looked ordinary again. Rows of cars, shopping carts corralled like metal ribs, a neon sign buzzing above the entrance. But Emily's heart was still back at that counter, where her name had been spoken without sarcasm and her struggle had been treated like a fact, not a flaw. Lily's breathing stayed steady as they reached Emily's old sedan, paint dulled by years of sun and small collisions with life. Emily eased Lily into the back seat and buckled her in, fingers careful, checking the strap twice the way mothers do when they are trying to control at least one thing. Lily's eyes fluttered. Mom, she whispered, are we in trouble? Emily swallowed, crouching to meet her gaze. No, sweetheart, she said, forcing her voice to be warm and certain. We are not in trouble. We are going home. Lily nodded slowly, then leaned her cheek against the car seat, already drifting. Emily closed the door quietly, then stood there for a moment with one hand on the roof of the car, breathing as if she had been holding her breath for years. She reached into the bag and touched the envelope with the gift card, Then the small card with the clinic number. Paper. Plastic. Tiny things. Yet they felt like a bridge. Behind her, the store doors opened again. Emily turned and saw Alexander Whitmore walking toward her, not with a crowd, not with security, just alone, hands in his coat pockets, expression composed but not distant. Claire Donovan followed several steps behind, speaking into her phone, already turning the incident into action items and scheduled meetings. Alexander stopped at a respectful distance, far enough that Emily did not feel cornered, close enough that she could hear him over the faint traffic. "Emily," he said. She braced herself, instinctively waiting for the other shoe to drop, for a catch, for a request that would turn kindness into a transaction. Instead, Alexander's voice stayed calm. "I want to make sure you have enough for tonight," he said. Emily's pride rose fast, protective and sharp. "We will manage," she replied, too quickly. Alexander nodded as if he expected that answer. "I believe you," he said. "That is why I am not offering you pity. I am offering you options." He pulled out his phone, tapped once, then held it down again without thrusting it into her space. "Claire has the clinic number, but I also have a contact at a pediatric urgent care that will not turn you away if you are short on the copay," he said. "If Lily's cough worsens, I want you to have a place to go without fear." Emily's throat tightened. The words "without fear" hit her harder than any money could. She glanced through the rear window at Lily's sleeping face, then back at Alexander. "Why are you doing all this?" she asked again, quieter now, because the first answer had not fully fit in her mind yet. Alexander's eyes softened, and when he spoke, it sounded like a promise made long ago and finally kept. "Because the world has enough people who look away," he said. "And because your daughter deserves to grow up believing her mother is respected." Emily felt a sting behind her eyes. She blinked, holding it in. "I do not want her to think she is less," Emily whispered. Alexander nodded once, understanding that this was the real emergency. "Then do not teach her that," he said gently. "Do not shrink in rooms that were built to intimidate you. You belong wherever you need to be for your child." Emily's hands clenched around the bag handles. The plastic creaked. She tried to find words big enough. "I have been doing everything alone," she admitted, barely audible. "Sometimes it feels like I am one bad day away from losing the ground under me." Alexander did not romanticize it. He did not say everything happens for a reason. He simply said, "Then let us put more ground under you." He reached into his coat and pulled out a simple card, not glossy, not dramatic, just a clean white rectangle with a name and a number. "This is my office line," he said. "Call tomorrow. Not to thank me. To talk about what you need. Childcare. Work. Something stable." Emily stared at the card as if it might vanish. "I do not have a resume," she said, almost apologizing for her life. Alexander's voice stayed steady. "You have a work history," he replied. "You have reliability. You have grit. That is more valuable than a perfect piece of paper." A car passed, headlights sweeping over them, and for a second Emily saw her reflection in the window, tired, pale, ordinary. And next to her, the man whose name filled news headlines stood like an ordinary person too, quietly insisting she mattered. Emily took the card with careful fingers, as if accepting it required courage. "Okay," she whispered. "I will call." Alexander's expression softened into something like relief. "Good," he said. "Go home. Get Lily settled. Tonight is for breathing. Tomorrow is for rebuilding." The next morning, Emily woke before her alarm because Lily's breathing was the first sound she listened for now. The apartment was small, the kind where the kitchen light reached the living room without trying, and the heater made a tired, clicking noise like it was negotiating with winter. Emily stood over Lily's bed for a moment, watching her daughter's chest rise and fall more evenly than the night before, and she felt something loosen inside her that she had kept knotted for too long. On the counter sat the sensitive formula, bright and new against the worn laminate. Emily measured the scoop carefully, added warm water, shook the bottle until it looked smooth, then held it to Lily's lips when her daughter stirred. Lily drank slowly, then sighed, the sound so soft it nearly broke Emily's heart. "Better," Emily whispered. Lily nodded, eyes half closed. "It does not make my throat itchy," she murmured. Emily swallowed hard, blinking at the ceiling. After Lily fell back asleep, Emily stared at the small white card Alexander had given her. It sat beside the clinic number like a dare. "Call tomorrow," he had said. Tomorrow was now. Emily paced the narrow strip of carpet between the couch and the window, rehearsing what she would say, then scolding herself for rehearsing because she should not have to audition for help. Still, years of being judged had taught her to prepare like every conversation might be a trial. She picked up her phone, thumb hovering, then pressed call before fear could talk her out of it. It rang once, twice. Whitmore Group, a woman's voice answered, crisp and professional. Emily's throat tightened. Hello, Emily said. My name is Emily Carter. Mr. Whitmore gave me this number last night. A brief pause, then the tone changed, softened by recognition. One moment, Miss Carter. The line clicked, then Alexander's voice came through, calm and awake as if he had been expecting her. Emily, he said. How is Lily? Emily exhaled, surprised by how much that question mattered. She is better, Emily replied. She slept. She drank the right formula. Thank you. Good, Alexander said, and Emily could hear something like relief behind his composure. Now tell me what you need, not what you think you are allowed to ask for. Emily's eyes stung again. She stared at her hands, rough from cleaning jobs and late-night dishes. I need stability, she admitted. I work shifts, different places. No benefits. Childcare costs more than I make some weeks. I am always choosing what bill can be late. There was no judgment on the line, only quiet attention. Do you have transportation? Alexander asked. A car, Emily answered. It runs most days. Okay, he said. Today, I want you to come in. Not for an interview that makes you beg. A meeting. We will look at a few roles. Something consistent, daytime hours, benefits. And we will talk about childcare support. Emily's pulse jumped. I do not have professional clothes, she blurted, and hated herself for how quickly shame tried to protect her. Alexander's voice stayed steady. We're what you have, he said. You are not the problem that needs dressing up. Emily pressed her lips together, swallowing a small sound. I do not want people to think I am getting special treatment, she whispered. Alexander paused, then spoke with gentle clarity. Emily, you are getting fair treatment, he said. Special would have been letting you be humiliated because it was convenient. Fair is making sure the system does. Not punish you for being human. Emily sat down on the edge of the couch, phone against her ear, heart thudding like she was stepping onto a bridge she could not see the end of. Where do I go? She asked. Alexander gave her an address, an office building downtown, and then something else that made her blink. When you arrive, ask for Hannah Price, he said. She runs our community hiring program. She will meet you in the lobby so you do not feel lost. Emily nodded, even though he could not see it. Okay, she whispered. I will be there. One more thing, Alexander added, his tone firm in a way that felt protective. Bring Lily if you need to. We will accommodate. No mother should have to choose between showing up and being a parent. Emily's chest tightened again, not with fear this time, but with something warmer. She glanced toward Lily's room, where the soft hush of sleep still held. All right, she said, voice steadier now. Thank you. Alexander's reply was simple. You are welcome, he said. And Emily? Yesterday you walked into that store and did not break. That is the kind of strength we build futures on. Emily ended the call and sat very still for a moment, letting the words settle. Then she stood up, opened the closet, and pulled out her cleanest blouse. It was not fancy. It was not new. But as she held it in her hands, she realized something had shifted. For the first time in a long time, she was not preparing to be judged. She was preparing to be seen. Emily arrived downtown with Lily bundled in a soft hoodie, her daughter's small hand tucked into Emily's palm as if the city might swallow them if they let go. The office building Alexander mentioned rose in clean lines of glass and steel, reflecting a pale morning sky. And for a second Emily felt that old instinct to turn around, to retreat before someone could remind her she did not belong. She parked on the lowest level of the garage, counted the last few dollars in her wallet without meaning to, then caught herself and exhaled. She had promised herself she would stop living as if every step required permission. In the lobby, the air smelled faintly of lemon polish and fresh coffee, and the floor shone. The way the grocery store floor had shone, but this place did not feel like a trap. It felt like a threshold. Emily approached the front desk, voice careful. Hello, she said. I am here to see Hannah Price. The receptionist's smile did not flicker when she looked at Emily's worn shoes or Lily's sleepy face. Of course, she replied. One moment. Emily waited, Lily leaning against her hip, and she noticed the little things, a wall of framed community photos, a shelf with children's books near a seating area, a bowl of fruit that looked less like decoration and more like a quiet invitation. A woman in a navy sweater and slacks walked toward her with an open expression and kind eyes. "Emily," she asked. "I am Hannah." Her voice was warm in a way that did not feel rehearsed. "And you must be Lily." "Hi, sweetheart." Lily stared, then gave a small nod, shy but curious. Hannah crouched slightly, so she was not towering. "We have crayons in the conference room," she said gently, like she was talking about something important. "Would you like to draw while your mom and I talk?" Lily glanced at Emily for permission. Emily nodded, and Lily's shoulders relaxed a fraction, the way children do when they sense adults are trying to be safe. Hannah guided them through a hallway lined with soft gray walls and quiet art. Emily's heart thudded as they entered a bright conference room with a long table, but at one end sat a small basket of coloring books, crayons, and a child-sized water bottle, already waiting. Emily blinked at it. "We plan," Hannah said simply, reading Emily's surprise. "We want parents to be able to show up." Emily's throat tightened at the word parents, as if it was an identity she had not been allowed to wear with pride until now. Hannah sat across from Emily, not behind a desk, and slid a folder toward her. "Alexander told me what happened," Hannah said softly. "I am sorry you went through that." Emily's hands hovered over the folder, hesitant. "I do not want anyone to think I am here because of pity," she admitted. Hannah's expression did not change. "You are here because of potential," she replied. "And because the way you handled yesterday showed composure under pressure. That matters in every job that serves people." Lily scribbled quietly, the gentle scratch of crayon filling the pauses. Hannah opened the folder to a page with several roles listed in clear text, no jargon meant to confuse. "We have positions with consistent schedules," Hannah said. "Customer support, administrative coordination, community program assistant. Full benefits. Paid time off. And we also offer a child care stipend for qualifying employees." Emily stared at the words full benefits as if they were written in another language. "I have never had benefits," she said, and her voice cracked despite her effort. Hannah nodded, not surprised, just present. "Then let us change that," she said. Emily swallowed. "I do not have a degree," she added quickly. Hannah smiled, gentle but firm. "You do not need one for these roles," she said. "You need reliability, communication, and the ability to stay steady when people are not kind. You already proved you have that." Emily's eyes stung. She looked down at her hands, then at Lily, who was drawing a house with a bright yellow sun, as if her heart had decided to practice hope. "What happens next?" Emily asked, voice small. Hannah slid a pen toward her. "Next, we fill out a simple application," she said. "Then we do a conversation, not an interrogation. And by the end of today, I want you to leave with a clear plan." Emily took the pen, feeling the weight of it like a key. Outside the glass walls, the city moved on, indifferent and loud. Inside this room, for the first time in a long time, Emily felt the ground under her becoming something solid. Hannah guided Emily through the application with a calm efficiency that made it feel less like paperwork and more like someone finally opening the right door. Emily filled in her work history, listing cleaning shifts, front desk temp jobs, and late-night customer calls she had taken from a cracked phone while Lily slept on the couch beside her. Each line looked ordinary on paper, but Hannah read it like it mattered. "You have stayed employed through hard seasons," Hannah said. "That is not small." Lily colored quietly, humming under her breath, a soft sound that turned the sterile office air into something almost homelike. When the application was complete, Hannah stood and smiled. "Now we talk," she said. "Tell me about a time you solved a problem under pressure." Emily's first instinct was to say she had no examples worth mentioning, because she had been trained by life to shrink her achievements until they fit in other people's comfort. But then she thought of last night, of the counter, of Lily's cough, of her own voice refusing to crack. "Last night," Emily admitted, "I kept my calm because my daughter needed me calm. I did not argue. I did not insult anyone back. I asked for the right solution, and I stayed focused on what mattered." Hannah nodded, impressed in a quiet way. "That is exactly what we look for," she said. "Composure, clarity, care." The door opened softly, and Alexander Whitmore stepped in, not with dramatic timing, but with the simple presence of someone who keeps promises. He wore a tailored suit, but his expression was the same as the grocery store, steady, attentive, human. Lily looked up, eyes widening in recognition. Alexander smiled gently. "Hi, Lily," he said. Lily held up her drawing. A bright house with a big yellow sun and a tiny stick figure holding another stick figure's hand. "That is us," Lily said. Emily felt her throat tighten. Alexander's gaze warmed. "That is a good home," he told Lily. "Strong walls." Lily seemed pleased with that and returned to coloring. Alexander looked at Emily. "How is she today?" he asked. "Better," Emily said. "Thank you." Alexander nodded once, then turned to Hannah. "How did she do?" Hannah did not hesitate. "She is exactly the kind of person we want in our community programs," Hannah replied. "She communicates clearly. She is resilient. And she cares." Emily's cheeks flushed, the praise unfamiliar and almost painful because it contrasted so sharply with the way she had been spoken to in so many other places. Alexander pulled out a chair and sat, not at the head of the table, but beside Hannah, keeping the balance. "Emily," he said, "I am not here to hand you a job because of one moment. I am here because your pattern matters. You show up. You stay steady. You do what is right for your child. That is character." Emily's fingers tightened around the edge of the folder. "I do not want charity," she said again, because she needed him to understand that accepting help did not mean surrendering her pride. Alexander met her gaze. "Then do not take charity," he said simply. "Take an opportunity. Earned. By who you are." Hannah slid a single page across the table, clean and clear. "Community program assistant," she said. 38 hours a week. Health insurance. Paid time off. A child care stipend. Starting pay is $24 an hour. Emily stared at the number like it was a typo. $24 an hour meant groceries without calculating pennies. It meant gas without panic. It meant a doctor visit without dread. Her hands trembled, and she pressed them into her lap, trying to hold herself together. I can start when?" she managed. Hannah smiled. "If you accept today, you can start next Monday," she said. "We will help you with onboarding. We will set up your benefits. And we will connect you with the child care partner we use." Emily's vision blurred. She blinked hard, refusing to cry, but a single tear slipped anyway, quiet and unstoppable. She wiped it quickly, embarrassed. Alexander's voice softened. "Do not apologize," he said. "Tears are allowed when you have carried too much alone." Emily looked at Lily, who was still coloring, unaware that her mother's entire world was shifting at this table. Emily took the pen Hannah offered, and her signature appeared on the page in careful strokes, as if she were afraid the ink might disappear. When she finished, she exhaled a breath she had been holding for years. "Okay," she whispered. "Yes." Hannah reached across and shook her hand with genuine warmth. Alexander nodded, satisfaction quiet in his eyes. And in that bright conference room, Emily felt something she had not felt in a long time. Not just relief, but arrival. Emily left the Whitmore building with Lily's drawing tucked carefully into her tote, like it was a document more important than the one she had just signed. The city air felt different on her skin, as if the same streets had softened their edges overnight. In the elevator lobby, Hannah pressed a small packet into Emily's hands. Onboarding steps, benefit forms, and a neatly printed list of child care partners with addresses and phone numbers. Nothing fancy, nothing dramatic, just the kind of practical help that changes a life because it respects time. Lily waved goodbye with a sleepy smile, clutching a single crayon Hannah had let her keep. In the garage, Emily sat behind the steering wheel for a long moment without turning the key, staring at her reflection in the rearview mirror. She looked the same, but something inside her had shifted from survival into direction. She drove home carefully, like someone carrying a fragile new future in the passenger seat. At the apartment, she set Lily down for a nap, then spread the paperwork across the kitchen table the way other people spread out travel plans. She read each line slowly, not because she could not understand it, but because she had never been allowed to imagine it belonged to her. Health insurance. Paid time off. Child care stipend. It sounded like a language spoken by other families. She called the clinic number Claire had given her and scheduled a follow-up for Lily, and when the receptionist asked about payment, Emily felt the familiar panic start to rise, then remembered the word benefits and answered with a steadier voice than she expected. That evening, Emily walked back into the grocery store, not because she needed to prove something, but because she wanted to reclaim the place where she had been made to feel small. The automatic doors opened to the same bright lights and glossy aisles, but Emily's shoulders were different now, straighter, quieter in a way that did not apologize. Lily walked beside her holding a small stuffed bunny, breathing comfortably, eyes clear. People glanced at them, some recognizing, some not. Near the customer service desk, Tina was working again, her posture more attentive. She saw Emily and froze for a second, then her face softened. "Hi," Tina said, voice careful. "How is your little girl?" Emily paused, surprised by the question. "She is better," Emily replied. Tina nodded, swallowing. "I am sorry," she said quietly. "I should have spoken up." Emily studied her for a moment. The apology did not erase what happened, but it did something else. It admitted the truth. "Thank you for saying that," Emily answered, calm and honest. "Next time, speak up for someone who does not have backup." Tina nodded quickly, eyes shining with the shame of learning. In the management office across the way, the door opened, and Claire Donovan stepped out, phone in hand, expression brisk. When she saw Emily, she stopped. "Miss Carter," she said, and there was something different in her voice now, less corporate, more human. "How is Lily?" "Better," Emily said again, and felt the strange power in repeating it. Claire nodded. "Good," she replied. "I wanted you to know we have already started retraining, and we are implementing a dignity policy at the registers and customer service. No employee is allowed to comment on a customer's appearance, income, or type. Any concerns about fraud go through procedures, not humiliation." Emily felt a quiet satisfaction settle in her chest, not vengeful, just right. "That should have been the standard already," Emily said. Claire held her gaze. "It is now," she replied. As Emily turned to leave, she noticed the designer scarf woman from before standing near the bakery, avoiding eye contact. Emily did not chase her apology. She did not need it anymore. Outside, the sky had turned a soft lavender, and the parking lot lights flickered on one by one like small promises. Emily buckled Lily into her car seat, and Lily looked up at her mother with a serious little expression. "Mom," Lily said, "are we still good?" Emily leaned in and kissed her forehead. "We are good," she said, letting the words become a truth they could both live inside. She started the car, and as the engine caught, she realized that justice had not come as a shout. It had come as a quiet correction, a system forced to look at itself, and a mother finally given room to stand tall. Monday arrived like a clean page, and Emily Carter walked into the Whitmore building with a simple tote bag, a lunch she packed herself, and a quiet steadiness that did not need permission. The lobby still smelled faintly of lemon polish, but now it reminded her of preparation instead of judgment. Hannah met her at the entrance with a warm smile and a visitor badge that felt temporary only because Emily had not yet learned to trust good things when they were real. Lily was at the Child Care Partners Center 2 blocks away, tucked into a bright room with storybooks and gentle teachers, and Emily had checked her phone 3 times before the elevator even reached the right floor. When the doors opened, the office greeted her with calm voices, soft keyboards, and sunlight spilling across glass walls. Hannah walked her to a desk with her name on a small card, not glamorous, not dramatic, but it made Emily's breath catch anyway. A name on a desk meant you were expected. It meant you belonged. "First day," Hannah said, placing a folder down. "We go slow. We build confidence. You are not here to be perfect. You are here to grow." Emily nodded, grateful for the kindness that did not come wrapped in pity. She spent the morning learning systems, reading community program notes, and practicing phone scripts meant to help families find resources without making them feel ashamed. The work felt strangely familiar, like she had been training for it her whole life, without realizing it. She knew what it sounded like when someone was scared but pretending they were fine. She knew what it sounded like when someone needed help but did not want to be judged for needing it. Around noon, she stepped into the break area and poured herself coffee, hands steady. 2 coworkers introduced themselves, friendly and casual, and when they asked about her weekend, Emily did not shrink. "It was a turning point," she said simply, and smiled without apology. Later that afternoon, Hannah invited Emily to a short meeting in a small conference room. Alexander was there, not at the head of the table, just seated with a notebook, listening. Emily paused at the doorway, that old reflex whispering that powerful rooms were not meant for her, But then she remembered the grocery store counter and how she had stayed standing. She walked in. "How was the first day?" Alexander asked. "Good," Emily replied, then surprised herself by adding, "I like this work. It feels like I am doing something that matters." Alexander nodded, pleased. "It does," he said. "And you do." He slid a document across the table, not a contract that trapped, but a policy draft. At the top, in plain words, it read Dignity Standard. "We are rolling this out across all stores," Alexander said. "Training, procedures, and accountability. No employee gets to turn poverty into entertainment." Emily read the page, heart tightening, because she could picture the faces of people who had swallowed shame at registers just like she had. "This will help a lot of people," Emily whispered. Hannah smiled. "That is the point," she said. Alexander looked at Emily, expression calm but intent. "I want you on the advisory panel for this," he said. Emily blinked. "Me?" Alexander nodded. "Yes," he said. "Not because you suffered, but because you understand. You can tell us what respect looks like in real time, not on paper." Emily felt something settle inside her, something steady and new. She had spent years being treated like a problem to manage, and now someone was asking her to help shape a standard. She thought of Lily's small voice asking, "Are we still good?" And she realized the answer had become bigger than their apartment, bigger than one grocery store. "I will do it," Emily said, voice clear. That evening, she picked Lily up from child care, and her daughter ran into her arms with a laugh that sounded like a new beginning. On the drive home, Lily held up a finger painting and announced, "I made a son," as if the world needed to be reminded light was possible. Emily smiled, eyes on the road, heart full in a way that felt almost quiet. At home, she tucked Lily into bed, then sat at the kitchen table with her new employee handbook open beside the clinic appointment card and the grocery receipt she had kept, not out of bitterness, but as proof of where the story turned. She looked around their small apartment and realized it did not feel like a cage anymore. It felt like a starting place. And in the stillness, Emily understood something that would stay with her forever. People will try to measure your worth by what you can afford, but dignity is not a price tag. It is the way you keep your head up when the world tries to push it down, and the way you choose to lift someone else when you finally have the chance.